For the projects we showed, the $6 million, you've moved towards really financing all of your program. You've moved towards, for the most part, sustainability on the water side. You're not there at the exact target as defined. We would define by the province, but you're doing a great job. You don't have to rely on debt to take care of your program. So you did a lot in the last couple of years, or the last 5 years, but you're in really, really good shape. On the wastewater side, obviously we've got provincial grants, we've got property owner contributions, etc. We've got some of the costs, the venturing, which would be funded by development charges over time. When we talked about the asset replacements and such, you know, with your water system, some of it dates back to the 1920s, like not a huge portion, but you do have services that are basically 90 years old. When you're getting into 90-year-old pipes, they're not going to last that much longer. You know, you're to the point where replacements are going to have to be looked at. When you're into wastewater, the pipes can last a little bit longer because they're not into the same water. It's normally contained, and it's got a lot more chemicals in it, and they have a tendency to last less than the water mains. A lot of your wastewater system since 1970. So when we take a look and take a look at your system, your investment, we've got about $120 million on the water side that you've invested to get in. So if we divide that by the 6,700 customers, we're at about $20,000 per customer for water. You got $42 million invested on the wastewater side. You divide that by a little less than 3,000 customers. You know, you've got a sizable investment there as well. So you're probably tracking, remember I talked about $35,000 per customer. If you got water and wastewater, that's your level of investment. What is being considered over time, some replacements in the forecast, but then there's the longer term assets, about $160 million that have to be considered over the longer term. We can do this life cycle calculation, and with the province defined the need for full cost pricing. And how do you do full cost pricing? And what it was defined as is having the full value of your system, your asset replacement into your rates. And from my perspective, being 34 years in municipal finance and as an economist, the best way that I could deem or certify that you would have full cost recovery is if I took all of these water mains, or let's just take water mains for example. I know the age, the engineer benchmarks tells me these pipes will last X number of years, so I can forecast from when it's built, when it has to be replaced, you know, rule of thumb. And then I inflate it to that date, and then I say, how much money do I need to put in the bank every year? It'll compound, and I'll have that money when it needs to be replaced. Just like if I want to retire in 10 years, or 20 years, I want to have $1 million. Other than winning the lottery, how much do I need to put in and invest it, and I'll have that $1 million. So we've done that. That's what this life cycle is. And in order to achieve that, you need to be putting about $2.5 million in for water, a little over $1 million for wastewater. You have to get that into the rates to be able to say you have full sustainability. So that's a measure, that's an order of magnitude, and we're not ramping you up to that, but you know, over time it's something that you need to do. You can see you have been moving, and it's partially defined, and I'll explain this in a minute, it's partially defined by how much of your water rates are going towards capital. Either replacing capital, or also how much you're putting aside in reserves. So how much of the rate is going towards your capital side? And that's where that measure of the life cycle gives us a good indication how much your rates are really going towards your infrastructure. Right now you're at 73%, you know, and by the time we hit just slow movement, you're reaching towards full sustainability by the time we hit as I was defined by the province. Obviously, the wastewater side, not so much, but over time, with debt charges and stuff like that, you'll see that those rates get up there. For operating budgets, generally we've used inflationary impacts. This will be part of your operating budget reviews. So if we take a look at your water side and look at the operating budget, we've broken it into three components. First one is operating costs. That's the day-to-day costs of running the system. Chemicals, hydro, maintaining the mains. That's about 1.8 million. And generally, it's rising at about inflation. And then we've got capital related, which is dealing with that $6 million worth of infrastructure. And then we've got, you have been putting monies aside towards long-term replacement of your assets because you've got a sizable amount of infrastructure that you need to be dealing with over time. So really, you blend this all together, your expenditures would go from about $3.9 million to $4.9 million over the 10-year period. Roughly $100,000 increase per year over the forecast. And I'll show you the rate impacts in a minute. On the wastewater side, right now, a lot of your costs are pure operating. We've got a little bit in there for capital, so only $231,000. So your margin that's going towards the capital isn't huge. You're mostly just covering the day-to-day costs. Over time, we've got increases on the capital side, and we've started to broaden the life cycle reserve side. Now keep in mind, even though we've got life cycle reserves, that's either, some councillors may say, well, I don't want to set that much aside, just sitting there idle. When we're doing these calculations, it's either an amount that's going into reserve funds and or in your, you could be spending that against infrastructure replacement. It's just that we'll see this when we get the Water Opportunities Act and we go and do those more detailed engineering reviews. So right now, what we're demonstrating is a trend that you'd be moving on. Obviously, right now, you're just going to be considering your 2013 budget. That's what you'll be looking to improve. But what we're giving you is the general direction, given the legislation, given your system, where we think you should be moving towards over time. And if we take a look on your water side, this is reasonable. Well, I think it's reasonable, but you have to pass the budget. But 2% increase is really what we're looking at. Impact on the annual bill. So the monthly base charge, we're basically adjusting that by inflation every year. And then the rates that we gave you to fully fund the capital and operating, everything goes at about 2% per year. So your bill right now in 2012 is about $512 for an average water bill. And we're suggesting with these increases that basically you'd be increasing it by less than $1 a month. So less than $11 increase per customer. And that would, as I said, that goes from $512 to $522 basically, so it's about a 90-cent increase per month.
So with the water consumption going down, without growth, the individuals that are currently on the bill are going to be the ones that are paying more for the water that they use, even though they're doing an environmentally good thing by doing. So we need growth in order to maximize the $11 a year by spreading it out over more people.
And we've provided, and we have provided for some. And the more growth you get, yes, it helps to cover off your fixed cost.
Yeah.
On the wastewater side, it's not bad. Well, 7%, but it's on $406. So yes, we're looking at about a $30 increase, about $2.50 a month. As I say, right now, what you've got is almost just pure operating costs. You haven't got a lot of margin in there on the capital side. This, I think, you really do need to consider for next year. Over time, there may be the ability to smooth this out